The New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders, its directors and employees assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, objectivity, or usefulness of the information presented on our site. We do not endorse any recommendation or opinion made by any member or physician, nor do we advocate for any treatment. You are responsible for your own medical decisions. Now I'm going to turn over the introductions of our speaker to Martha Butterfield, the webinar coordinator of NJCTS. Marty?
Kelly, thank you and welcome everyone. It gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's presenter, Dr. Michael Osit. Dr. Osit received his undergraduate degree in education and psychology from SUNY, the State University of New York, and his doctorate in counseling and psychology from Rutgers University. He is a licensed clinical psychologist with a private practice in Warren, New Jersey, where he does psychotherapy assessment for children, adolescents, adults, couples, and families. Dr. Osit has presented numerous workshops and lectures on a variety of topics related to children and families, including child-adolescent development, parenting skills, learning and behavioral disorders in children. Additionally, he's presented workshops on a variety of issues, including strategies for the classroom and teacher, family and women's relationship issues, and promoting positive self-esteem in children and adults. He's published books and numerous articles on children, families, and parenting. This is actually Dr. Osit's second appearance in our webinar series. His earlier presentation on raising well-adjusted kids in the age of instant everything was held in September of 2012. It's available for free download on our website. Dr. Osit, welcome. We're delighted to have you join us again. So without further introduction, I'm going to turn tonight's presentation over to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be discussing the holiday season in terms of holiday stress and managing the holidays for you and for your children as well. So I just want to first give you sort of the flow of this evening's webinar. First, we're going to talk about the source of holiday stress. We'll also cover some complicating situations that are occurring during this holiday for you, possibly, such as the loss of a loved one, divorce, blended families, and several others. We're going to talk about proactive strategies, what you can be doing to sort of minimize, maybe even prevent some of the holiday stress that people often experience. We'll talk about identifying stress and then coping with it, giving you specific strategies. The signs for stress in children, which can be different from adults, and tips for helping your children cope with it as well. And finally, we'll address special needs children in terms of what happens with them and how to help them with the holiday stress season. So certainly the holidays can be filled with happiness and joy, and we hope that they are filled with happiness and joy for all of you. But they can also be riddled with stress, with anxiety, and with depression as well. There's a recent study that indicates that 8 out of 10 Americans experience stress during the holidays. That's 80% of all Americans experience stress. That study also indicated that children are more likely to experience stress during the holidays compared to other times of the year for them. What's the major source of stress? 75% of the adults report that money is a major source of stress during the holiday season. So what are the sources of some of the holiday blues? Well, first of all, holidays can remind you of perhaps unresolved family issues from your own family of origin when you were a child, and certain dynamics that may have occurred during your growing up years. The holidays can also remind you of a painful childhood or feelings of sadness, loneliness, or depression that occur prior to the holidays. They can be magnified, even if they occur all year, in an effort for you to maintain holiday cheer. So in other words, if you're feeling sad or lonely or depressed already entering the holidays, then those feelings can be magnified. Because the expectation is for you to be joyous and happy and spread holiday cheer, and it's hard to do that when you're not feeling it inside. Another source of holiday stress would be either the recent loss of a loved one or just the loss of a loved one, yet another holiday season without that individual. Sometimes people have unrealistic expectations, and those occur from family, and they occur from friends, and they also occur from yourself in terms of how great the holidays are supposed to be or you want them to be. And that sometimes can be pressure and stress. And for those of you who may be spending the holiday away from family and friends and other loved ones, that sometimes is a source of stress. And sometimes you feel isolated from others. And if you are isolated, then the holidays can be a stressful time for you as well. Other sources of holiday blues would be a great deal of social demands that occur during the holidays. Now, if you have some social anxiety, or maybe even if you're shy and just don't have a lot of confidence in social situations, the holiday season really creates a lot of demands for you to be interacting with people in social situations, such as holiday parties, office parties, get-togethers, and that can create some anxiety and stress for you. And then there's the pressure of gift giving. Can also be a source of stress. We have hectic schedules during the holiday season, and even as coping with store and mall crowds and the traffic around stores can create stress for individuals during the holiday season. Some of the complicating issues that I really alluded to earlier that may affect your holiday season, one of them could be ongoing financial challenges. It's a time when your budgets are stretched, and if they're already stretched due to financial stresses, then the holiday season really magnifies that issue as well. Another complicating issue is a significant change in your financial situation. That is, if one or if you have lost your job during the year, or your partner has lost his or her job during the year, and your financial situation has changed, that's going to affect or complicate the holiday season for you, and perhaps your family as well. Then there's families who are in the process of divorce, divorced families, and we have blended families. Those are all complicating issues that sometimes create stress during the holiday season. And as I mentioned earlier, the loss of a loved one. So the best thing would be to try to be proactive. Now, we're at December 11th, we're getting close, so it's time to be proactive now. By being proactive, you can minimize or even eliminate holiday stress. So being proactive in terms of gift giving. One suggestion I have is shop early. The advantages, this has a double-edged sword. Shopping early enables you to really have maybe more selections because there's more on the shelves. The downside is you may not really be able to take the opportunity to have as many special deals and good pricing. But it will relieve stress if you get things done early. I have to say at this point also, when I talk about being proactive and I talk about discuss some of the strategies for dealing with holiday stress, you really can generalize this to well beyond the holidays and just life in general and navigating through your life and coping with life, because life is filled with stressors anyway. So don't think myopically just in terms of the holidays, although that's certainly helpful. But think about it in general. For example, shopping early, that's being planful, and it's being getting things done ahead of time so this you don't run your life in terms of a crisis orientation with deadlines looming. So another sort of proactive strategy would be, in terms of gift giving, is ask the recipient of the gift what they want. Sometimes it's very difficult and creates a lot of pressure that you want to get the exact right gift for someone that's important to you. And sometimes just simply asking them is a really great way to not only relieve your stress, but you're making sure that they receive the gift that they really want. Now that also has a double-edged sword. Some people really don't want to be asked for a lot of reasons, one of which may be, if you love me, if you care about me, and if you know me, you should know what I want, or I just want to be surprised. So you have to really judge who the recipient of the gift is and make a decision about this in terms of, do I be proactive or not, and ask them, what is it that you want? If you, since money really is going to be a theme throughout this whole webinar in terms of stress, if you establish a budget and stick to your budget, that is a proactive way of really minimizing the stress during the holidays. Another way to be proactive is just managing your time. You want to simplify your holiday and your commitments wherever you can. Life can get very complicated, and what we want you to do is, keep things as simple as possible. Make sure you're allotting time to yourself and to do the things that you enjoy as well, so you don't get consumed by the holiday. You want to balance your giving and your receiving in terms of gifts. Allow yourself to receive, and be sure to give to yourself during the holiday season. You want to schedule smart. What I mean by that is, again, being planful with your schedule. If you have to, go to 2 or 3 different places, plan it out, navigate it so that you can condense your trips and utilize your time much better. You also want to be planful and realistic with your commitments, and don't overschedule. And also, you may need to be flexible with your schedule. So to be proactive, if you find that you're doing too much and you're saying yes to too many commitments, or you've already said yes to a commitment, it's okay to change your mind and be flexible and reduce your stress that way. Excuse me. Finally, being proactive is to maintain your own health. Avoid overeating before the holiday. And the holiday usually brings a lot of food along with it, so you don't want to overeat prior to the holiday. You want to avoid overdrinking before the holiday, because alcohol is also associated with the holiday. Some people, in preparation for the overeating, they starve themselves, crash diet, so that it sort of gives them permission to eat more during the holiday. Well, that works in reverse. It doesn't really help at all. You want to maintain your exercise regimen, watch your diet, and of course, make sure you're getting enough sleep. I mean, this is basic health anyway, keeping yourself healthy mentally as well as physically. So generally, you want to manage your time well, you want to set your priorities, you want to be realistic with your goals. Don't spend too much time planning. Let some spontaneity be involved in your life. You want to share the responsibility, meaning ask family members to help out. If you're hosting a party, ask your family members to help prepare food and prepare the home. Take time to finish the tasks that are important to you. If a person has a lot of undone or incomplete tasks sort of dangling, that creates a lot of stress and a very overwhelmed feeling. And you got to listen to your body. Rest when you need to. If you're tiring or even aching, you need to take a break. Here are some of the signs that adults would experience if they're under stress. So I'm just going to go through these. If you're feeling unusually irritable or angry, and you anger easily, some people experience just a continuous feeling of sadness. Some people, when they feel stressed, if this is a sign of stress in you, that you start withdrawing socially. People experience a sensitivity to feeling rejected by others or left out. A sign of stress would be a change in your appetite, either overeating or undereating. And similar with sleep. Either you're losing sleep, difficulty falling asleep, or you're sleeping excessively. Generally, when a person has experiencing a lot of stress, they're less tolerant of others. So if you find yourself less tolerant and snappy, or even exceptionally judgmental of others, that might be a sign that the holiday season is really getting to you. Stress can interfere with concentration and your energy level. So if you're feeling fatigued and have a low energy, that might be a sign of stress. For some people, somatic complaints or physical complaints are expressed as stress or anxiety, or sometimes depression as well. So, if you're starting to have some stomach aches, headaches, particularly ones that don't really respond to treatment, even over-the-counter medications, then those stomach aches and headaches might be due to stress that you're experiencing. You might have a reduced ability to function during events that you normally would do fine at, in terms of your activities, or just functioning at work. being with friends and family. Sometimes when you're under stress, you lose interest in hobbies or interests that you normally take pleasure in, and it can impair your thinking or concentration. So this is a long laundry list of signs of stress. And of course, you don't need all of them to say, okay, if I have all of these, then I'm stressed. Any one of these can be a sign of stress. So just keep monitoring yourself and keep this slide handy. Now, in terms of children, they're affected by the holiday season as well. And these are some of the ways that they're affected. You know, children experience life the same way we experience life. Well, they say the same situations that we experience it, but they experience it a little bit differently. One thing is that their routines during the holiday season are often disrupted. And this can cause stress for them because kids need routines. Helps them feel secure and stable. Kids like to know what to predict. So routines are disrupted. That makes life unpredictable. That causes them to be insecure and anxious. Also, kids, maybe more than adults, have expectations, high expectations for the holidays. They're asked to make lists for presents. You may be taking them on a vacation, and they have expectations for that. And they may be realistic expectations, and they may not be realistic expectations. But the holiday season also causes school stress. This is sort of an indirect stress, what I would consider indirect stress. What I mean by that is, you know, we're coming up to the next week is typically, for most schools, the last full week of school before the holiday break. So what tends to happen is a lot of teachers are finishing up units, having big tests, projects are due, papers are due before the holiday break. And so that creates a lot of stress. It just happens to coincide with the holiday season, but be aware that that may be occurring for your kids as well. Kids also experience disruption in sleep patterns, disruption in what they eat, when they eat. And that's, you know, sort of a stress effect on kids. Then the holiday season brings travel, either travel for vacation, which is, you know, fun travel, hopefully, or travel to family and friends during the holiday season. And some kids travel better than other kids. Travel represents a change in routine, a disruption in what they're used to. It may involve long car rides, and that is what the holiday season brings for them as well. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that kids react to their parents. Sometimes you don't even realize how powerful your behavior and your modeling is on kids. Even the very, very subtle kinds of statements or attitudes or behaviors that you exhibit in front of your kids, they pick up on. And sometimes they don't even pick up on it consciously. They just sort of experience it. But they're going to react to your stress. So if you're experiencing stress, that has an effect on your children, or can have an effect on your children as well. And then, of course, they're attending parties, and there's that whole social thing for them, too. Sometimes those parties have kids their age, and they have fun. Sometimes those parties have kids their age. They don't know them, and it's hard for them to sort of assimilate. Maybe they're the odd person out. All the other kids know each other, and they don't. Or, you know, sometimes they attend parties, and, you know, it's, you know, just a strange place, and they become anxious or stressed being in a place they're not comfortable in. Sometimes, you know, the other kids are doing things or playing things that they don't really know how to, so they feel inadequate. Now, in terms of the signs of stress in children, if you notice this list, it's all of these are the same signs and symptoms of stress in adults. So children can also experience these same symptoms of stress that we went over before in the slide regarding adult stress. But what I'm going to do is just add some additional ones that kids will exhibit that hopefully adults will not. So another sign of stress in a child specifically would be them having more vocal outbursts, rage episodes, or just crying easily or crying for what seems to be no reason at all. Kids will also react to stress with a decrease in academic functioning. So if all of a sudden they start to do poorly on tests, be forgetful, disorganized, making inattentive mistakes, then that could be a sign that they're experiencing holiday stress. Also, they may have a decrease in interest in attending extracurricular activities. So if they're playing a sport, participating in a sport, or they dance or do taekwondo, and typically they like it and enjoy it and look forward to it, and all of a sudden they're seeing it as drudgery and giving you a hard time about going, that might be a sign that they are experiencing stress. Another sort of recent sign of stress in children might be an indicator of an increase in screen activities or isolation from the family, which sometimes go hand in hand. What I mean by increase in screen activities, I mean more time on the computer, surfing the internet, playing video games in front of their phone, and their iTouches, their iPads, all those screens. So they already spend a lot of time. Research says about 7.5 hours a day, believe it or not, in front of screens. Television is involved in that also. But if you see an increase in that even, in their usual typical time, that might be a sign. Your child is really escaping and trying to sort of isolate themselves to minimize their own feelings of stress. So coping with holiday stress. Here are some tips and strategies that I'm going to present to you that might be very, very helpful in terms of you being able to cope with the holidays. First of all, many people have traditions and rituals during the holidays. And, I kind of like traditions and rituals. I think it's really good for families. But, sometimes trying something new and changing something up is a way to help avoid holiday stress and cope with holiday stress. Just doing something different. Another way to generally cope with holiday stress would be make sure that you're spending time with people you care about. Sometimes the holidays bring us into situations and people that may not be as meaningful or important to you. Maybe even you dislike them. So it's important to make sure that you're sort of combating that with spending time with the people that you do care about. And I also think that it's important that you spend the holidays the way you want to spend them, not what others want you to do. An example of that would be, I have a patient who recently, not even recently, this is the first Christmas without her husband, who died suddenly about 8 or 9 months ago. And what she's been dealing with in therapy with me over the last few weeks is, it started really with Thanksgiving. Everybody in her family, out of love, it comes from a good place, but they're telling her, this is what you should do. We want you to do this. Come here, be with us. And that's not what she wants to do. So sometimes, you have to really assert yourself and really spend the holiday the way you want to spend it, and not so much the way others want you to. And really what's best for you and your family as well. That's part of giving to yourself, too. Another way to cope with holiday stress, believe it or not, is volunteering your time to help others. That gives you a good feeling inside. It helps balance the whole holiday giving and receiving issue. It also keeps, perspective in terms of what the holiday is really about. So volunteering your time can really help. And it really can be something very minimal, or it could be, magnanimous. It really doesn't matter. It really was, what you can do in terms of your time and how you can offer yourself. For example, I had a patient recently, a couple of weeks ago. This is a 37-year-old man. He was eating breakfast in a diner one morning before starting his workday. He was telling me this. And he looked over and he saw this older couple sitting across from him. He said they were probably in their late 60s, early 70s. And they were just having their breakfast. And when he asked for the check, his check, he told the waitress to give him their check as well. That he just wanted to pay for it, just to do something nice for them and pay for their breakfast. He also gave them an instruction to do it anonymously. Please don't tell them that I did that. And then he paid his check, their check, and left. And I just thought that was a really, really nice thing. And really, that's a holiday spirit kind of thing to do. And that really helps you feel good about yourself inside. You also want to cope with holiday stress by staying active, maintaining your social life, but not overdoing it, but trying to, in some ways, keep things normal and your life as typical as possible as well. So, sometimes it gets just too much, and I have, the first bullet point there is breathe, and I mean that really literally. Take time to breathe. You need to take a break, get perspective, take literally some deep breaths sometimes, regroup yourself, and then go on with what you need to do. Using a partner or someone that's close to you to talk about your feelings when you're feeling stressful, that in and of itself can be very, very helpful. Just letting it out and talking about your feelings. And sometimes when you hear when someone just listens and understands you, that is very helpful to you. Another time you learn, well, they're feeling the same exact thing, and that that ability to relate to one another also helps you deal with stress and put it in a better place so it doesn't plague you. If you're too overwhelmed and things are breaking down, it really is okay to seek help if you need it, even if you've never sought help before. If you seek help, and even if it's just to get through the holiday season, you'll learn a lot about it yourself and how to cope with stress in general. So if you do need it, don't deny that to yourself. Get some help if you're really breaking down, your functioning is really impaired significantly. Coping with stress means giving to yourself. I mentioned this earlier as well. This is a time when sometimes there's one person, for example, in a family, who sort of manages the holiday season, the social part, the entertaining part, the gift-giving part, the gift-buying part. And if you're that person, that means you're giving and giving and giving and giving. And that's an imbalance. And balance is very important to maintain happiness and avoid stress. So make sure that periodically you just give to yourself as well. Coping with holiday stress means shopping smart, staying within your budget, and making sure that you're really making the most of your money and getting appropriate gifts for the people you care about. You want to focus on the joy and the meaning of the holiday. If it's a religious meaning or just a family togetherness meeting, you can't lose sight of that, because you can get bogged down in all the minutiae of the holiday. But the most important thing is what the holiday means to you. And reminding yourself of that is a way to deal with holiday stress as well. You want to maintain perspective. Sometimes when you become overly involved in something, this applies to really anything, you lose perspective, and everything looks really glum, and it looks darker than it really truly is. So sometimes, going back to breathing, step out of your life, step out of yourself, think about things, try to gain perspective, and that helps you with stress as well. And then, these next two are really kind of related, using self-talk. What I mean by self-talk is people really learn and maintain beliefs about themselves and the world around them. And some of those beliefs are maladaptive or are unhelpful. Some of them are even untrue. Some of them are illogical beliefs. Nevertheless, beliefs create feelings, and they're expressed also as behavior. But it all starts with what you think, how you think, what you think about, what you believe about yourself, what you believe about the holidays, what you believe about the world and others. So what you have to do is you have to identify. This is really an excellent, excellent tool just in general in life. You go through your life, you have to identify what your beliefs are in specific situations, as well as generally. In your relationships or in a specific situation, what am I believing about this? And you have to really place a judgment on it and decide, is this belief helpful to me or is it unhelpful to me? Is this belief true? Is it logical? So if you really discover that some of your beliefs about the holidays are not true, that are irrational, or at the very least unhelpful, then what you have to do is use self-talk and challenge those beliefs. Attack the irrationality of it. Attack the unhelpful beliefs, and really replace them with realistic, true thoughts. I'm going to give you some examples of what I mean, because I know this sounds a little abstract perhaps, but here's some examples of what I mean. Common holiday belief, and sometimes you have to realize that beliefs are not always conscious, not always aware of what you're believing. Nevertheless, they're there inside of you, and they create feelings, either good feelings or bad feelings, depending on the belief, and then you act out those feelings and those thoughts. So here's a common sort of belief relating to the holiday season. I will never be able to finish shopping and get everything done in time for the holidays. There's that pressure, that feeling, that stress, that deadline, okay? So self-talk, to challenge that irrational belief is, you know, I always manage to get it done in time. This is not my first holiday season. I can plan it all out on a calendar, and I'll make sure it's done. So it's positive thought, it's a call to action, and it challenges the irrational belief that I will never be able to finish it with, you know what, I always manage to get it done, so likely I'll get it done this time. Here's another. I can't enjoy the holidays since my mother died. Certainly sad, and there's certainly truth to the somber feeling, but to use self-talk, I miss her, but I am surrounded by my whole family. She would want me to enjoy my family in the holiday. So you have to challenge that belief that it's impossible. I can't enjoy the holiday. And yes, there'll be a damper on the holiday if you've lost a loved one, and that's sort of a stressor or a complicating issue for this holiday for you. But there are positive things in your life, there are positive people in your life, and you have to focus on them as well. Excuse me. One last example. I can't afford to buy my children what they want. Here's the financial restrictions that people are certainly experiencing this holiday season. So how do you fight that? That's a true statement. You may not be able to afford, but you really want to buy them. That may be true, but to help yourself feel better, you say to yourself, self-talk, but I will make them happy. I'll make it a happy season for them. I know I can do that. I'll help them learn to appreciate what they receive, not what they didn't get. And that's a life lesson also. Be happy with what you get, not always looking for what you don't have. So that's what I mean by using self-talk and attacking irrational beliefs. Life is what you think about it. And if you're going to think half-empty, then you're going to be upset, depressed, anxious, and stressed. But if you can fight up those half-empty feelings and combat them with half-full feelings, then you're going to feel a lot more happy and balanced in your life. So for your children, these are some tips that I have for dealing with the holidays. First of all, remember I said you're modeling for them? Set a calm example. Even if you're not calm, set a calm example, because they're going to pick up on your stress level and react to it behaviorally. Try to keep their schedules under control. You have that list of signs of stress in your children, so if you recognize even the beginning signs of that stress, that's a sign to you, a red flag. You've got to make adjustments in whatever's happening in your family's life. If you get children to talk about their feelings, just as when you talk about your feelings, that's very, very helpful for them and cathartic as well. You want to use good judgment when you're going about this holiday season. If they're tired, if they're showing signs of hunger, don't push them. Kids will become irritable, act out, their tolerances, their judgment, their social decision-making, all deteriorates when they experience hunger and fatigue. So if you're going and going and going and during the holiday season, don't push them anymore. Use your judgment. Breathe. You want to reinstate routines whenever possible. Remember I said kids really need routines and that the holiday season really disrupts routines. But whenever you can, have them go back to their routines, whether it be daily or throughout the week. Provide them with fresh air and exercise. That's good for them. Again, avoid overscheduling, which will create fatigue, low tolerance, feeling overwhelmed. Get them to help you. Wait for kids to help. Just remember I said to you volunteering helps cope with stress. Well, getting them to help you gets them invested in the holiday, helps them understand the true meaning of the holiday, creates connectedness in family, and helps them channel and relieve stress. Make sure you're scheduling downtime and quiet time for them so that they're not running and running and running. And of course, you've got to remind them periodically what the holidays really are about, whatever that means for you and your family. whatever you value in the holidays, make sure that doesn't get lost in the running around and the gift giving or whatever. I also suggest that having family meetings. If you are sensing that your kids are not dealing or coping with the holiday very well, then call for a family meeting. And everybody's required to be there. Everybody gets to speak. And hopefully you key into their feelings and you do some problem solving. If they're presenting a problem or a complaint, then hopefully you can jointly come to some good solutions. That's a great way to help kids deal with stress as well. And in terms of using your judgment, some people put gifts out prior to the holiday and some people don't. You have to know your children. Some children are okay with that. It doesn't really faze them or affect them. It gets them excited, but in a positive way, in a productive way. Other kids, it gets them very frustrated. The anticipation and anxiety really increases. So know your child and use your judgment in terms of whether or not you put gifts out for them. Now, I know many of you listeners are educators as well, some interest going on in the classroom for kids. Because kids' education, they're getting hyped up and they're getting active, overly referring to it. You don't want to give it any more homage or attention than it needs already, than it has already, because that will just hype them up even more. And as that winter break approaches, you try to provide some fun learning activities that may deviate from your normal classroom routines. Just sitting in a seat and learning through a didactic lesson, but you may have them playing a game, a learning game that gets them moving around. If you are finding that your class is exceptionally hyped up for the holidays, provide periodically, maybe once a day, a 10 to 15-minute holiday talk. So people in your class, the kids in your class, can share what they're planning for the winter break. And what you want to do is you want to really structure it and contain that discussion and the focus of the holidays to these brief discussions. And that way, that may limit some of the hype beyond those 15 minutes. It's almost like you're giving them permission, that 15, 20-minute period, to hype the holiday, and then it's back to business, back to work. You can also create a class project. I'm very, very big on giving, giving, back as well. And you want to create a class project, perhaps, that involves active involvement for each student for a community service, for some social action project, so that they know that this is a time for them to offer themselves to those who are less fortunate. So some of the special circumstances that some of you may be experiencing for this first holiday: loss of a loved one. Maybe some of you have, or someone close to you has a serious illness. You're separating. You're divorced. You may be, or one of your loved ones may be experiencing legal issues. And then we have the financial limitations, or maybe a recent financial limitation. These are all, and there are others as well, but these are the major ones that may taint this holiday season for you. So as difficult as it is, because none of those are really great experiences, and they're not fun, and the reality is they will damper. But you have to try to focus on the positive. No matter how bad things are or have been, or no matter what this holiday season means for you in your life, there are always positive things and positive people, positive things happening, positive people in your life. You want to acknowledge the specific special circumstance. You don't want to ignore it, but again, maintain perspective. If you have conflicts with others during the season, such as parents divorcing or divorced, you know what? Set them aside. This is not a time to bring those personal conflicts in. It's a time for the benefit of your children. Excuse me, to set them aside. kind of losing my voice here. You want to help your kids and help each other understand those limits financially if you are experiencing financial problems. What you don't want to do is you don't want to create undue fear or alarm. They can't walk away from a discussion thinking, oh, we're not going to have a house to live in, I'm not going to have clothing. But they have to also be realistic if you experience some financial limitations. That's just part of life. So you have to do it in a couched way, but in a way that they have realistic expectations and that they really appreciate everything they receive. If you've lost a loved one, you want to think about what your loved one would have wanted for you in the holiday season. So a note on special needs children. I think you need to pay close attention to children who have special needs, whether it's a medical need, neurological, psychological. You have to pay close attention because those kids with special needs often react in a magnified way, in a more extreme way to the same stimulus as a child without special needs might react. And you have to magnify your attention to cope with, to help children with special needs cope with strategies. Particularly the earlier you intervene to help them and offer help, the better it will be. So you have to pay close attention and intervene soon. Don't wait to see if it really manifests or gets more extreme. Routines are especially important for special needs children. Many children with special needs, their life is out of control in some ways, or it's disorganized or unpredictable. So routines, during the holiday season, remember that routines are disrupted. So try to build them in as much as possible. Of course, sleeping, diet, timing when they eat, and physical activity are exceptionally important with special needs children. You want to be careful, be very, very attuned to not overwhelming them with schedules or even overwhelming them with presents. Many kids who have special needs, their brains don't incorporate stimuli the same way other children's brains do, and they become very, very overwhelmed very easily. So just know your child and know how much you're giving them, when you're giving them, and how you're scheduling them. So above all, what I want you all to do is really enjoy the holidays, appreciate the holidays, appreciate yourself, the people that are in your life that really contribute to your life, and never take anything for granted, because what you have is really, really cherished and should be cherished, and who's in your life should be cherished as well. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season and that it's stress-free. And I thank you all for listening and joining us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Osit, and I'm sorry you seem to be having a little bit of trouble. I'm going to give you a minute or so to get a sip of water or whatever. Do you feel like you want to continue with the Q&A, or are you...
No, I'm good. I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
I'm past it, yeah. A lot of talking today.
Yes, yeah, and it does build up a little bit and can get uncomfortable. Okay, then I'm going to start. You tell me if you think you've had enough. So this first question has to do with depression, and in this case, this person is talking about her mom, who seems to get depressed this time of year, and the mom doesn't want to visit or participate in stuff, and she seems to spend, the mom does, talking about holidays in the past, like getting kind of stuck and not being able to participate in the present. So this individual wants to know what you would recommend to kind of help her mom.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that is a difficult situation. I'm thinking that her mom is depressed generally, and the holidays make it even worse for her. So what I would suggest is, first of all, you can see how the mom is stuck in the past, and she's thinking about, I don't know what she's thinking, but one thing to do would be draw out what those thoughts are. She's not going to use self-talk, but maybe you can do it for her. So try to get her to talk about what it is about the past that makes her upset during the holidays, and think about it in terms of what is she thinking and believing about it, so that you can challenge it. And that's on a thought or a cognitive level. On a behavioral level, what you can do is do something spontaneous and sort of force her in a nice way to do something different during the holiday. Just tell her you're surprising her, you're going to be picking her up and taking her somewhere to lift her spirits, to do something very special for her, to make her feel very important. That might boost her a little bit as well.
Okay. This reminds me of my mom, who seemed to be just remembering Christmas past, and all of her family are gone. So I think that played, in my mom's case, it kind of played into that.
Mm-hmm. But I'm
she's
here.
remembering.
Focus on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm here. Focus on me.
Okay. I have a question about IEP. So, can you suggest any ways that an IEP might address these stresses for kids? It's actually a two-part question from a teacher, so I'll ask that part first. So is there anything in IEP that you might be able to suggest that might make a difference for a kid in a classroom?
Well, yeah. I mean, if this particular teacher has a kid, or other teachers have kids who show signs of stress or depression in their classes, having your support staff in every school, whether it's a guidance counselor, a school psychologist, social worker, a SAC, substance abuse counselor, someone is there available. Sometimes it's even the school nurse. I've used janitors, maintenance people. If they have a connection with the kid, then that relationship sometimes is very, very helpful in helping the kid cope with the school day and depression. And hopefully, it's you connect them with a trained professional in the school so that they have an ongoing relationship, and that should be placed in the IEP, such as they'll meet with the school social worker or psychologist, whomever the person is, once a week, twice a month, whatever it is. And there's an ongoing sort of therapeutic, supportive relationship for that child. It's very advantageous to have that in the IEP because that child, that professional knows exactly what's going on in that classroom, in that school, on the playground, because they're there. And when I work with children, I'm not there. Fortunately, I have a good working knowledge of what happens in schools, but each specific child's experience in a classroom with those, with the other kids and the chemistry and on the playground, I don't know. That professional does. So putting that in the IEP is a good support system for that child.
Okay, so those opportunities.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
And also lots of communication between home and school. More than the typical communication or formal, scheduled communications. That's a good thing to put in an IEP as well.
So the thing to include in the IEP then would be opportunities for this child to see someone, maybe on a more frequent schedule than they might be on right now. Okay. All right. You touched on this a little bit. This is a slightly different take on what you did, but this again, this is the second half of that question. This teacher is talking about the change in the regular classroom structure. Leading up to the holidays can present problems for the neurologically atypical child. So any suggestions on how to deal with that is really what this teacher is looking for.
One thing is whenever you can, prep them, try to give them the game plan for the day or the morning or the afternoon. Even if it's a different game plan than they're, or schedule than they're used to. The whole thing about children who have neurological impairments is that they need predictability because oftentimes their world is so chaotic inside their own heads and they experience the world in a disorganized way. So that creates stress, anxiety, depression, frustration, feeling of overwhelmed, and they'll either act out or sometimes act in, withdraw. So if you can do the best you can to say, even if, for example, if you're going to be out at a conference and there's going to be a substitute teacher, that child needs to know in advance and to be able to predict and be prepared for the difference in his or her day. So have them keyed into or prepped for the different activities or the deviance in the school schedule.
Okay, good ideas. Have a question from a new stepmom. She says that she doesn't know how she should handle gift giving with her stepchildren, with her new stepchildren.
This is another good question, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. The key to that, it's very, very complicated. You have a lot of issues with stepmoms, and if you're very cognizant and considerate, you don't want to appear in any way that you're replacing their mom, their natural mom, but you also want to facilitate a relationship with your stepchildren. So what I suggest you do is that discussion has to be had with your husband, who is the father of the children, I assume. And you really have to follow his lead, but bring him on board in terms of you want to express some, form of giving to the kids, but you don't want to overstep your boundaries, but you don't want to do too little either or do nothing. So sort of brainstorm with your husband what is the most appropriate thing for you to do.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay. All right. I thought I had. All right. Thank you. I have a question that just popped up that I think is important, so I'd like to try and get to this one. It's a little long, so just bear with me here.
Sure.
This mom is saying that she has an 8-year-old daughter who has some TS and anxiety and OCD and all of those things that go along in that package. And there's some financial issues at home, and the child has these flare-ups around the holiday times, just exactly the kind of things that you talked about a little bit earlier. How do you explain the lack of gift giving to a child without having it erupt into some real bad situation of a flare-up and the child is inconsolable and really makes the emotions and the stress even worse?
Well, what I don't know is this typical behavior, or is it just during the holiday season? I suspect that this child has difficulty not getting what she wants generally, and then she can't handle it and acts out with meltdowns or temper tantrums. And it's even harder for her to regulate internally her own behavior and emotions. So, this is a parent that has to spend a lot of, first of all, you have to keep calm and keep cool. If you start yelling, it just escalates and fuels her anger, typically. So, I know that's idealistic, and I know it's difficult, and sometimes maybe even not realistic. But that is the first goal is you must remain calm. Sometimes what I find is just not restraining, but just putting your arms around her in a very loving but a very firm way. Physically, that will help her gain control. And then you just keep whispering in her ear, I know it's hard when you can't get what you want. I know you feel disappointed. And just hold her, almost like in a bear hug, until you feel her stop restraining. And then she's under control. And that's a way to get her under control. What's going to happen is this is something that's going to take a very long time for her to cope better with. What I mean by that is probably years. It's not going to happen overnight or in a month or so. Mm-hmm. But you have to be very consistent, be calm, physically hold her, because she's out of control herself. And by holding, you're saying to her, it's okay, I can help you get under control. And then a lot of talking. She has to really understand, what that sometimes, and highlighting that she does get some things that she wants, but she can't get everything that she wants. Everybody has to understand and accept this. When a child, such as this young girl, is having this kind of behavior because they're not getting what they want, they lost perspective. They forgot everything else they get and have. So it's up to you as the parent to remind her of that. But it is a very difficult situation.
It's hard, yeah. It's an interesting segue into the next question about, how do I help my kids focus on the true meaning of the holiday? And I think in today's society we get very hyped over holidays. And you do lose focus of, what the true meaning is.
Yeah, I mean, the first step is remind yourself. Because the meaning of the holiday is different for different people. Mm-hmm. So remind yourself of what the meaning is for you and what you want to convey and have your children learn about the holiday. So have that clear in your own mind. And then you have to verbally and repeatedly, I don't mean drum it into their head, but periodically remind them of what that goal is or what the true meaning of the holiday is for you. As you go through these days and the weeks, approaching the holiday, when you witness or see representations in real life of what the holiday means to you, because it's not just during the holiday season that these things occur, point them out to them and connect it to the holiday, related to the holiday. If you see someone being kind to another person, even if you don't know them, it's a social situation that they're witnessing, use that as a teachable moment.
Mm-hmm.
And just a lot of talking, a lot of discussion, and model it yourself. Say it yourself, what you appreciate. This is, especially if they make or give you something. Of course you make a big deal of the gift, but really emphasize the fact that they thought of you, that they care enough about you to put the time into it, that kind of thing.
You mentioned in one of your slides about doing some community service or something along those lines. Maybe having kids pick something that they could participate in that way and make it a family thing might be a way to kind of bring that focus around a little bit for some families.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good. Some families, what they'll do is they'll go through old toys, unused toys they've outgrown, and they say, let's donate this to kids who could really need it during the holiday season. And that's really fine and good. I like better having them bring them, participate in the actual giving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so much more powerful and meaningful when they experience it firsthand. So that really is a great suggestion, yes.
Okay. Let's see what time it is. I think we have time for one more, and I'm going to ask about this situation. A 16-year-old daughter is being left out of gift exchange and parties, which seems pretty harsh to me. How does the mom handle this with her?
Yeah, I mean, she's 16, and she's a teenager, and a lot of, particularly, teenage girls, not so much boys, but a lot of teenage girls, they make it a thing, during the holiday season, a gift exchange thing. Sometimes they do it formally, sometimes they just discuss it, but it's very clear to them who's included and who isn't. She may be on the periphery of a social group and is not included in that, and is helping her, But, I suspect that, an issue like this might be just scratching the surface for this girl, that maybe she's having trouble connecting socially anyway. But to me, it's time for her to be encouraged to change peer groups. If people are suddenly leaving her out, if they were including her at first, it's time for her to change, who she's friends with, because they're not acting like good friends. And that's a hard thing for a kid to get and understand. But, she has to be around kids that accept her and involve her and include her. She can't keep trying to be involved with kids that she's just learned this. And, as a parent, you have to teach it to her. If people, for whatever reason, if they're not including you, they're not good friends to you. And you deserve to have good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's got to really start examining those friendships. This might be, the indicator, a clear, concrete indicator of a change that was going to occur anyway in a social relationship.
Okay. I think we're going to wrap it up here. Doctor, thank you very much. Great information and very timely. So thank you again for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you all for joining us on our webinar on holiday stress coping skills for parents and children. There is an exit survey which we need everyone attending to fill out. The discussion board is now open and available for the next 7 days on the NJCTS website for any additional questions that were not covered in tonight's presentation. That website is www.njcts.org. Also, an archived recording of tonight's webinar will be posted to the site shortly. Our next presentation, 504 Accommodation Plans versus IEP, the Individual Education Plan, will be presented by Sue Connors and is scheduled for January 15th, 2014. This ends tonight's webinar. Thank you, Dr. Osit, for your presentation. Thank you everyone for attending. Happy holidays and good night.